We can cross to Beirut, where we can speak to Karim Bitar, Professor of Middle East Studies. Karim, good to talk to you. As we speak, we have said Antony Blinken is in Greece right now. We'll be arriving within the next few hours, possibly the next 24 hours in Israel. What's your sense, this fourth visit by him to the region? Are there any more reasons for hope this time?
Well, I'm afraid this fourth Blinken Middle East tour since the October 7 massacres will not prove more successful, more fruitful than the previous visits. It appears that the Americans are finding it increasingly hard to provide an incentive for the Israelis to finally take another look at some of their actions, which they must know in advance jeopardize the region's security. Israel attacked the southern suburbs of Beirut a couple of days ago without even informing its U.S. ally. So there is a genuine risk of a wider regional conflict. Today, the situation was increasingly tense at the Lebanese-Israeli border. And there are also domestic American political considerations. We are entering an electoral year. Joe Biden and Antony Blinken are fully aware that the Democratic Party is starting to lose part of its younger generation voters and significant part, if not all, of the Arab and Muslim American communities in the United States. And this could make a difference in several swing states. So ultimately, Joe Biden could become one of this war's collateral victims.
Yeah, it's a pretty bleak assessment, Karim. I guess for Antony Blinken arriving there, he wants to get something out of this. You know, we heard from our correspondent in Jerusalem a short while ago that one of the reasons briefed by the White House will be about the next phase of war, how you start to get a resolution and Israeli troops out. Now, Yoav Gallant, the defence secretary in Israel, had put forward this post-war plan of sorts, not yet official from the government, but saying that there will be no Hamas in the region after the war, but there'll be Israeli presence, there will also be Egyptian presence, and some kind of Palestinian setup there as well. It seemed quite vague. What was your sense of the post-war plan?
Indeed, I had a feeling that it was not only vague, but extremely theoretical. It's only understandable that Israel would ask for a complete demilitarization of Gaza. However, you still have conflicting statements emanating from senior members of the Israeli government. At the time when Mr. Gallant was presenting this plan that is quite ambitious but very difficult to turn into anything practical, some of his colleagues were still openly calling for an ethnically cleansed Gaza, for a reduction of Gaza's population from 2 million to 150,000 to 200,000. So the time has come for the Americans to increase pressure on Mr. Netanyahu to put some order in Israeli policy and finally rein in those extremist government ministers.
Karim, can I get your brief thought on this? You're in Beirut. We're hearing the rhetoric of Hassan Nasrallah, the Hezbollah chief. Suggestion seems to be that they are beginning of stepping up attacks. And yet, if you look at recent analysis, Western analysis, saying that some of the fighters actually withdrawn, Hezbollah fighters, 2-3 kilometres away from the border. Do you see that as potentially a sign of de-escalation?
I'm afraid we have not yet reached the state of de-escalation. Hassan Nasrallah's two recent speeches were quite virulent, extremely threatening. And the reason why I was referring to these Israeli governmental statements is that they are actually a gift from God for Hezbollah, because they allow Hezbollah to present itself as a necessary deterrent force against a new Israeli invasion of Lebanon. So we have a feeling of being held hostage in this part of the world by a messianic right-wing Israeli government and radical Islamist groups, and these two movements are feeding off of one another, and this is why the situation has become extremely dangerous, and it's really up to the United States, because only the United States can increase the pressure on the Israelis to put an end to this carnage in Gaza.
Karim, thanks for your time. Karim Bitar, Professor of Middle East Studies based in Beirut.